All right. Hey, sorry that I'm a little late. I'm having a little bit of issues with the account, so I'm having to switch my computer over to my personal computer right now and set up the presentation on my personal computer. So it's going to just be a second. So random. Don't know why it stopped working. Hey, everyone. So silly. Sorry about the little bit of, like there's a little bit of a delay right now because I'm having to switch over my computer from my work computer, which is deciding not to work with Zoom right now, to my personal computer. So I'm just sorting it out. Just give me a minute. James on the call yet? Not quite. Why does it just automatically? There. Hey y'all. Oh, I like that Cass is in space right now. Woo. Can everyone hear me okay? Or would you prefer if I had like headphones on to do that sound?
I can hear you now. I couldn't at first, but then I figured it out. I had to like join the audio word. I'm still trying to get into my computer because I find it better than my phone, but.
Right, so we're all having technical issues tonight, which is beautiful, which means it's a collective issue. I think I've got it. Okay. Okay, woo, nailed it. All right, James is supposed to be coming on and giving a little bit of an intro tonight. So I know we're a couple minutes past the time we were going to start at. So I'm just going to see if he's jump in here. He did want to tell, share a little story at the start. So I'm just going to see if he's going to jump in here. So how's everyone doing?
Hey, Philip.
Look at this. I can see people's faces. I can see movement. I'm not just staring at plates or walls. It's amazing.
Hey, Philip, just in case I don't get a chance to talk to James when he comes on, I can only do about 15 minutes. Lauren and Mel and I, it's a perfect storm of schedules. I've got to roll into another Zoom meeting here in about 15 minutes or so.
Goodness.
Yeah, lucky me, right? And Lauren's kind of swamped work, single parenting right now. So, well, I'm gonna try and hand off to Mel Arsenault, but we'll see. But if anybody needs anything from a management perspective, please let me know or send us a message, and we'll roll into it.
All right. So I'm wondering if James is having some of the same issues that I was having earlier, because I was having such issues trying to get onto my Zoom. But yeah. You guys can all access Teams now because we can do that through the ECN network, right? Are we all able to do Teams?
I think so. We've talked about that. I think James do Teams. I think he thinks that Zoom is a better platform for sharing the items, like sharing your presentation and things like that. So I'm not sure how that's going to work, because PSP was actually pushing for Teams as well. I think because of the cost, like the funding for actual Zoom meeting rooms and stuff like that. So more to follow. But if Zoom keeps being problematic, let us know.
Yeah.
and we'll set up, like, we'll do what we can. We'll see if we can set up some 65.
I can second the Teams thing is problematic as well, because with my unit, we've been doing a lot of stuff with Zoom, and PowerPoints are having issues to be loaded because they have to be certified before they get in or something. Like all the attachments are blocked, or it's really complicated.
Okay. Yeah, so I think probably
because my security on my work computer, and I use CFMWS, so I'm on a very, very loosey-goosey network, not DWAN network, and it was saying that my security profile wasn't updated enough for me to be able to use it. That's why I had to switch to my personal, because I'm like loosey-goosey with my personal, even worse than CFMWS one.
you're not fancy enough for us.
I seriously am not.
Yeah.
Should have worn my fancy pants, but instead I'm in my jogs. Well, I'm glad we all match our outfits though. So I'm going to get started. Just let's just give James benefit of the doubt that he's just going to jump on a little bit later. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see what happens. I know he did have an intent to give a little bit of an intro. There's Melanie here just coming in, but he did have an intent to give a little bit of an intro, a little bit of background story. So maybe we'll just push that to the end of the presentation when he can jump on. So today's presentation is on barriers, and specifically barriers when it comes to sport performance and how do we overcome those barriers within our performance. Now, I'm sure if I asked everyone to tell me about a barrier that they've experienced in sport, we'd all have a really good story of a barrier, or maybe not. Maybe we're not sure what barriers really are affecting us when we're doing our sport. But I will say that I've had a ton of barriers when it comes to my sport. Specifically, I was a national karate athlete. So with karate, there's a lot of control that you have to have in the sport. You have to have a lot of emotional control. You have to have a lot of emotional maturity to be able to perform and go to those competitions and be able to fight and compete without ever losing your cool. So one of my barriers was my lack of emotional awareness during one of those same tournaments in which I just kind of lost my gumption at this girl who was, not that it mattered, but in my head at the time it mattered, but she was a lower belt than I was. And she wasn't following the rules to the point where I ended up getting kicked in the jaw because she kept fighting after the fight was over. So I ended up dislocating my jaw from that one kick, but you have to keep fighting. So I got back in the ring and I fought the girl, and whatever happened at the end of that match, but my emotional control was completely lost. So I had this lower ranking belt who had just accidentally kicked me. I was black belt at the time, who kicked me in the face, dislocated my jaw, and now I'm livid. I think that was one of my more successful years in karate. So I was like on top of my game, and I just pummeled her afterwards, like not sportsmanlike whatsoever. It was just the worst thing I could have done to the poor girl who just was like complete, like you could Bambi-ize the whole kind of fight kind of thing. So that became a huge barrier for me to control that emotional response in those fights so that I could get past and be more technical as a fighter and be more recognized in that respect versus my Tasmanian devil approach of like, I'm gonna get in your face and just like get all up in there. So that was a barrier that I had to overcome. Unfortunately, I ended up hurting myself the following year and I wasn't able to really overcome it during my sport. So it was something I had to get on my own. Anyway, does anyone else want to share? Like when I tell a story like that, I see a few smiles in the crowd, and I'm sure we're all thinking about that time we flipped out at the ref, or we took the ball and we just chucked it at the goalie, or we chucked it furthest as we could get away from the other player, and the players are now like, fine, I'll go get the ball. It's not cool, and they're trying to like deal with your emotional reactions to something that shouldn't be happening on the field. So that being said, I am going to screen share now so you guys will be able to see what I'm seeing, and then I'm just going to get the presentation going so we can all start participating at any point. This is I've said this a couple times tonight, but it is kind of a loosey-goosey presentation tonight. So if you do have comments, questions, or whatever, jump in, interrupt me, because otherwise it's the Philippa show. I don't stop talking, and you know that, so jump in, interrupt whenever you want to. All right, so just give me a second. I'm just going to share my PowerPoint here. All right, we know the title of the presentation now. So when we're going over our barriers, when it comes to sport, one barrier that we usually all can kind of respond to is that wall in training. Now we've all hit a wall, I'm hoping, maybe. I shouldn't say I hope, but we've, that sounds awful, but we've all hit that point in our performance or in our training day or in our efforts that we just feel we can't get past that. We're hitting that limit, we're stuck, we just don't know where to go. We don't see the opportunity that's in front of us, a way around that, or maybe a training technique that we've missed out on that can give us that little bit of edge to get past that wall. Has anyone in the, I'll throw it out to you guys. Like I said, I don't want to fill up a show tonight, but did you guys want to tell me about a time where you maybe hit the wall, or you can kind of understand what I'm saying, when you've hit that limit and you just can't see yourself past it?
Every time on the beep test.
Bingo! I've seen those people. I've seen that limit. Does anyone want to express if they've hit a mental barrier when it comes to those kind of barriers? So what I mean by a mental barrier is that we're self-doubting ourselves so much that we're not taking that next step.
That's me with just about everything. But yeah, when it comes to like the beep test and stuff like that, for years I could not get past a certain point, and I guarantee you I was running like consistently further and harder than like someone of the level I was reaching on the beep test could run. But when it came to just that specific test, it was in my head that I couldn't do it, and so I couldn't do it.
Yeah, beautiful example. And 100% of those, of a lot of those limits we hit is because of that reason. We just don't believe we can do it. And we might believe, we have people yet, like I'm sure Kaz had 100 people telling her, you can do this. You can get past that moment. You can get to that 9.5 to 10.5, whatever the level that you were trying to reach at that time was. Except when you have to tell it to yourself and you don't believe it, that creates a physical barrier in front of you as strong as a wall, which is why the wall is kind of the expression we use when we hit that barrier. It's because you can't see past it. You don't understand why you're not getting past it, yet it's in front of you and it's there. So I'm just going to pull attention towards that book from Anthony Hutchinson. His name's kind of cut off behind my Zoom panels over here, but I kind of pulled that book not because it's a good book, which I do recommend. It's a really interesting read if people want to jump into it. But I want to pull our attention to just the line under endure, where it has the mind, body, and the curiously elastic limits of human performance. And I pull that, and I want to use that word elastic, because that really is representative of exactly how we perform in sport. If we picture ourselves in the center of an elastic band, then we hit those sides and we might rebound back to the center, or you might be able to pull and stretch that elastic band in one direction to be able to get to those points. And the other thing of it is half the time we don't realize how much our elastic can stretch out, or how much tension we can put on that elastic before it breaks and we kind of crumple. And we're always kind of a little bit cautious about getting to that elastic edge. We're almost a little bit, I want to say, scared, because we don't want to see that failure occur, or we don't want to believe that, you know, those thoughts we have in our head were actually true. So we don't face those moments, you know, and our brain is creating that barrier for us. So let's talk a little bit about the wall. So there is actually physical characteristics that come with hitting the wall. I used to work with a ton of marathoners. I used to go to, as part of the, it's so dorky, I was part of the psych team that was working with the Toronto Marathon every year. So that was part of my like, woohoo, hoorah moment when I was younger. But I couldn't believe how many people you met prior to their races that you kind of knew that they were going to hit the wall. And then when you're watching the performance, so my job when the marathon was happening is I was a Sights on Bikes was the title. Honestly, psychologists were a little bit dorky, but you know, we're Sights on Bikes. So we would be biking around the race, trying to find those people that just were crumpling. They were just epically, I don't want to say failing, but they were failing because they didn't train enough or they were hitting their physical mental wall. And I'll tell you one thing, I'm just going to admit Danny here because she's got bumped out, I think. So when you hit that wall and you have those physical experiences, I'm sure you guys are reading the list there. Do you believe that we can tell ourselves we can get past it?
I guess there's a point though, like if you train yourself, yes, you'll go farther. That's why we see those crazy people going, I don't know, like surviving forever when they're not supposed to. But at some point though, your body will destroy itself. Like there's a physical limit to what you can do.
There is 100% truth to that. So there are certainly physical limits we put on ourselves. In fact, one of those studies that I saw for the wall, so back in my nerdy marathon days, they actually took muscle composition from some of those athletes that were hitting the wall. So they would do, so they would do, gross test, but they take a chunk of your muscle out and we analyze your enzymes within it and we see how much red blood cells are kind of in that area. And they actually saw that when people were having those feelings of the wall, their muscles are actually breaking down. So some people were having those physical reactions. However, slowed pace, desire, like some of those feelings that we get when we're hitting the wall is our body trying to tell us we've hit whatever limit we're telling ourselves is there, but it might not even exist. So you might not be that person that muscle breaks down in. If that makes sense. It kind of sounds like counterintuitive, but I promise, I promise there's sense to it. So it can happen at any point during the, Danny's having such trouble trying to get into this and it keeps popping up. I'm just trying to get her into the program, into the session here.
Philip, if I may add something, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Please, everyone interrupt.
Okay, cool. So I do have a lot of things to say about this. Like, I don't know, not many of you know this, but in 2018, that's when I joined the program. And that same summer in June, for a good 2 weeks, I couldn't stand up. Like, my boyfriend had to help me to go to the bathroom because I had like some kind of back injury and everything. And like, it was like a horrible summer. And then I got into this and like James was starting to say like, you have to have the beep test. And I was like, man, I can't even fucking walk. How am I going to do this? And then like slowly like it got better. And like, I just want to say how powerful like just your mindset is, because like the whole time I had Kim and Kara to really help me, and Katie too that was there. And it was like it was fun. Like I enjoyed and I was looking forward to doing the beep test. I know I'm weird for this, but like I went from 0 to like, I got like 10 by December, and after Christmas, I could have honestly gone easily like to 11 and 12 even, but I kind of stopped because I was like, yeah, 10.5, that's it, I'm done. But it really changes a lot when you're thinking positively about it, when you're like, oh, I'm excited, I know how to do this, and I really break down the beep test. It's like, okay, this is how you do it, this is like the steps you take, this is everything. And about that, there's a podcast I'm about to send a link. That's why I did a test. It didn't work again, sorry to everyone here. That podcast is I'm really gonna like mumble this way through, but it's a psychologist like that's really like into helping athletes, like Olympic athletes, to get better in their sports. And that's what he talks about, the power of journaling and the power of positive like thoughts, like telling yourself, like even if you hate like doing the beep test, like every day you're like, I love doing the beep test, I will get the beep test. It kind of really helps, and he explains it much better than what I just said. But yeah, I guess that's my point.
So you're 100% right, and I can't see the name of the podcast that you sent, but I will say there are can you know that? Can you tell me the name out loud?
Yeah, absolutely. So like it's the Tim Ferriss show. This guy does like interviews with he calls it like the world class people. So anyone who's successful in their field. So they're not necessarily like they have like, he interviews people for business, research, sports, everything, anyone who's successful in their field. So I will go get like the exact like number of the episode to give you a treat, but that's just a link to get there. But I will go number 490. I'll go copy and paste it more for like anyone who wants to.
So, you know, podcasts are a really good way to connect with some of those skills that we really need to work on. And I will tell you that I do listen to quite a few psychology podcasts. The Adult Chair is one of my favorite ones to kind of look at because it does teach, you know, it sounds kind of weird, but it teaches basic skills of growth for adults that we kind of miss out on when we're kids, because sometimes our parents are great, but they're not always great. So the Adult Chair kind of teaches us those extra ones. But you're absolutely right. There is actually science behind what you're saying there. So the more repetitive we are with ourselves, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I will do this, I will do this, the more it actually changes your thought process from that negative thinking to that applicable thinking, which is what I'm going to call it. Let's call it the applied thinking. We're going to go forward with this. We're not going to be stuck in our negative thinking. We kind of touched on this in the first presentation of that pairing. So that's it. Pairing is a really good way to start with that positive thinking. So anytime I'm self-doubting, so for Kaz, like I'm never going to get past 9, you pair that same thought with, I'm going to get to 10 and a half. Well, I'm never going to get to 9. Well, I'm going to get to 10 and a half. So you constantly are pairing it, and eventually the pair happens naturally. You naturally have a negative thought, and it's paired naturally with a positive thought. Eventually, the theory is, and I'm not sure if it actually happens, but eventually the positive thoughts, because you're forcing it to happen every time that negative thought happens, it ends up eating that negative thought a lot of the times. And we end up just staying really focused in that positive world. So yeah, 100%. I love that comment. That was great. Anytime you guys want to jump in, that's the kind of stuff. I eat that stuff. That's lovely. So I threw out this kind of like the hitting the wall, the actual breakdown of what happens. I'm laughing because I put, bam, it hits there, because younger Philippa was super fun when she wrote this, and now older Philippa's having to deal with this. So it's discreet, but it's a very obvious onset when you start to feel that limit, your limit reaching. So you notice it, but maybe others around you don't notice it. And then we start to see that our brain, this is where part B is where the brain kind of takes over. We start to feel a lot more of the cognitive effects of our mental processes affecting our physiological impact. So I'm kind of just reading my note there just to make sure I'm hitting all the points. So all of those things, like Joni was just saying, like those all come into play when it comes to our physiological performance, or our tactile performance. And you know, the result of that is, so part C, A plus B equals C, it's unintended alteration of our performance during that competition. So we might not even, sometimes we notice it, sometimes we don't notice it. You know, like I'll tell you, when I've been training and I've overtrained, which is not unusual for PSP staff to do, because we are gluttons we just don't think properly half the time. So when I've overtrained, sometimes I don't even realize that I've overtrained, because I've turned that part of my brain off so much that I'm ignoring those physiological symptoms, that the following day, and I'm sure like everyone's gonna be like, yeah, you know, the following day, that's when, you know, like I can't get down to the toilet properly because my legs are seized up completely. Or, you know, like I actually feel like, it feels like your muscles are breaking down in your body, but you know, that's probably what's happening, but it's not, you can't see it happening. Nobody else can see it happening. And you can't tell yourself that it's not happening because it's intense pain. So, you know, we've all kind of had that unintended result from our wall hitting. So elephants of wonder. So it's quite a sad story. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's such a sad story that I'm going to tell you about these elephants. So there's this story that happens, and I'm just going to read it to you guys, because if I kind of paraphrase it, I feel like I won't do it justice. Not my story. I took this story from somebody else, from the Unbounded Spirit. So if you want to check out that website, that's kind of where it's from. But it's about these elephants that were traveling. So my friend, not me, my friend on the paper, my friend was passing the elephants, and he stopped suddenly, confused by the fact that these huge creatures were being held only by a small rope tied to their front leg. No chain, no cages. It was obvious that the elephants could, at any time, break away from the ropes they were tied to, but for some reason they did not. And my friend saw a trainer nearby, and he asked him why these beautiful, magnificent, strong creatures just stood there and made no attempt to get away. And he said, well, when they're young and much smaller, we use the same size of rope to tie them. And at that age, it's enough to hold them. And as they grow up, they're conditioned to believe they cannot break away. They believe the rope can still hold them, so they never try to break free. These animals could break free at any time from their bounds, but because they believed they couldn't, they were stuck right where they were. So it's couldn't be more poignant to exactly what barriers pretty much are created in your brain. Something happened when we were younger. Somebody told us something. We experienced something. We had a fear of something. And that same moment tethers us to where we're limited to today. We don't even realize sometimes what that moment is. And you know, I'm sure if I asked Kaz why she feels like she couldn't get to that breaking point for her beep test, she probably wouldn't be able to tell me why. She might be able to tell me the first time she did the beep test, maybe she threw up, and then she's scared of going past that moment and getting to her pukey guts moment. But sometimes we don't know what it is. So we just got to understand in our brain that those limits kind of are imaginary because we've created that to happen. So I have a couple of like very philosophical questions at the bottom of the screen here, but think about what you're saying to yourself and how you're creating your own leash to a moment that doesn't exist in your world anymore. And how or what are the invisible ties or what invisible rope ties or beliefs to ourselves and our limits. So what are we tied to? Why are we tied to that limit? How do we break that rope down? And if I asked you guys right now, and I know you guys are kind of thinking about yourselves and what kind of limits that, you know, you're faced with and, you know, what moments started those limits out, you might be able to tell me something or you might not, and that's okay. I'm sure if I asked everyone right now if they felt like they had a limit or a barrier in front of them when it came to the sport performance or even life as a whole, you might not be able to pull a barrier or be able to describe anything out in front of me. Because I'll tell you right now, I've been thinking about these barriers for a very long time, since December. And I'll tell you, it's hard to define a barrier and it's hard to pinpoint what you're thinking, why that barrier exists. But I'll open it up to you guys right now. If anyone wants to share, if they can think of something that they want to share in terms of what do you feel like could be your limit? What are you attached to in your past that could be preventing you from performing well right now? See, it's hard to define it, isn't it?
I'll chime in one then, I guess, on somebody else's, but like, I don't know, when I was younger, I was like faster than everybody. I would just, they called me the Energizer Bunny. I was always moving, and like couldn't make me stop. And then the first time I kind of actually got into a scenario where I was doing like a workout that wasn't a sport, like, because it was always just me like doing fun things running around, you know. And I had that, like, all of a sudden everybody was just like passing me, and all of a sudden I just started doubting whether I was ever actually fit. And so now, like, whenever there's other people working out with me, I'm always like super anxious of, you know, oh, they're gonna think I'm such a bag of shit and blah blah blah, blah. So if I work out with other people, the level that I can get to is significantly below the level that if I work out by myself. But then occasionally, like, depending on the person, like if there is somebody that I'm super comfortable with, occasionally I guess like I'll actually be a little bit more motivated with that. But if I'm not like comfortable with the people that I'm around, or if I think they're actually going to give a fuck about how I'm performing, then I won't perform well. If I don't think that the people around me are going to give a fuck about how I perform, then I'll perform super well. Like, so this summer I ran my first half marathon. I didn't train for it. I've never run more than 15 kilometers in my life, and that was an accident. I got lost. And I just decided one day that I was, like, someone has assumed that I was going to sign up for it, so I did. So I signed up kind of like day of, and went, and I ran the half marathon in 1 hour and 39 minutes and came in first place. I beat most of the men on the military base, even the ones from the other countries that are generally more fit than Canadian soldiers. So I came in, even including the men, I came in 32nd of about 500 and some participants. And I have no idea where that came from. And then I ran a 5-kilometer race right after it just because I was so happy. And I placed third in that. And my first 5K of my half marathon was faster than the winner of the 5K. I have no idea where it came from. But if somebody had expected me to run that pace the whole time, I guarantee you I wouldn't have been able to do it.
So then the question we have to ask is, how do we train ourselves to think that everyone around us has zero expectations of her sport performance? Because that's going to help her excel, right? So if we start, and by all means, I will say this, a lot of people have discomfort and apprehensions and anxiety when it comes to doing anything socially, especially when it comes to sport or performance, because it's even though they're in their own heads having the exact same conversations with themselves, we all feel like we're the star, we're the show that people are watching to see what we can do. And so how do we train ourselves? Well, Kathy, you have a really, really good example there, because I'm going to go ahead and guess that a lot of other people have those same feelings, where when we get to a point where we could perform, or people don't think we will perform, that's when we will perform, because you don't think I will perform. I'm a step up because I'm gonna do this, and that's when we step up. So sometimes it's a coach that can pull that out of you. So the coach teaches you, like whatever you do is fine. Like, I'm just happy that you're here. I'm just happy you're performing. And if you finish the race, that's where my expectations are for you. Having those lowered expectations, you're like, I'm not just going to finish that race. I'm going to get first against all those guys. I'm going to get 32nd out of about 500 people. By the way, that's never happened to me before. I've never accidentally won an event. It's amazing. So by the way, keep that as your little, I've accidentally won stuff. That can be your expectation point. But does anyone else want to jump into that one? Because that was such a beautiful, beautiful example. So I'm going to go to the next slide then. And the next slide is a little bit contradictory of what we were discussing just earlier about the wall. And I threw this out here because David Goggins, I'm not sure if anyone has heard of that man. If you have not, please look him up, because he is incredible. He has some beautiful thought processes, so much so, and we do have time today. I do have a video for us to watch if we're comfortable. It's about 4 minutes long. So I'm going to see if that works just by clicking on the link. Like I said, I haven't used this computer today, so hopefully it works. Beautiful.
This is the checkers.
Excellent. We're all interested in my non-YouTube subscription, right?
So you only shared the PowerPoint, so we're not seeing the video
sorry.
right now, or I'm not anymore.
I'm getting there. Here we go. But I got it lined up, so that's pretty good. Are we good now? You had to miss the adverts, I'm sorry.
So the mind has a governor, like a car. If you're driving a car and the car has a governor on it, the car may say 130 miles an hour, but the governor is set for 91. Once that governor sets in at 91, the car starts doing this. The car wants to go. The car wants to go, but that factory said, we're not going past 91. We have a factory, a nice governor in our brain, and it's a survival mechanism that protects us from pain.
Anybody else having trouble hearing the audio?
Yeah, I don't hear much either.
Yeah, Philippa, you should
I'll
start
turn it up. I'll see if that works.
Yeah, yours. Yeah.
Is that better?
Do you mind putting the subtitles on? Just that way we'll maybe hear better.
Yes, I'm going to put the subtitles on if I close captions. Do you want me to rewind it? I'll rewind it. Okay.
Yeah, I can watch it from the beginning, yeah.
Are we okay with that? There we go. Round 2. Wait, round 3.
Human beings are only living at about you're driving a car and the car has a governor on it, the car may say 130 miles an hour, but the governor set 91. Once that governor sets in at 91, that car starts doing this. The car wants to go. The car wants to go. That factory said, we're not going past 91. We have a factory, a nice governor in our brain. And it's a survival mechanism that protects us from pain and suffering. The second we feel it, our mind says, oh no, this isn't fun. We should back off. We should sit down, find something more comfortable. There's something about the mind. The mind has the tactical advantage over you at all times. At all times of your life, the mind has a tactical advantage over you. Why is that? It knows that you're afraid. It knows your insecurities. It knows your deep, dark lies. And it starts to push you away from that. It pushes you in a direction that is comfortable. The mind controls everything. So what I realized was that when I was growing up, when I was 3 years old, I got all mad and I got all insecure. I realized that my mind kept taking me in this direction when things got uncomfortable for me. When I was facing my insecurities, I was facing my fears, my mind said, oh no, we have a tactical advantage. We need to get you and separate you from this feeling. This feeling of your life, all our feelings. We want the happy feeling. We don't want that feeling of this sucks. Why am I here? So you can't ask those questions, so you leave. I started realizing that if in that moment you can answer those questions, and you are now in charge of your brain versus your brain ruling you, that's where all of that stuff comes from. So the 40% rule is all of that. You get to 40%, your brain says, we're done. Let's roll, man. This is going to get paid. This is uncomfortable. So you sit down. It's a habit. So if you know that at 40% I'm feeling pain, at 40% I'm feeling pain, that's when the 40% kicks in. Now it starts. Okay, I'm feeling pain. My mind's saying, get out of here. Run, flee. The fight or flight kicks in. Okay, we're done. We're not good enough. It starts doing all these things. You start to believe it. Because the mind controls all. This is the time you have to gain control back of your mind. It's okay. Let's say back to 45%. And once you start giving yourself more and more hope, you start realizing, okay, the mind starts saying, okay, what are you doing? We're supposed to be going right, and you're going left. You start then controlling your mind. Start finding more in yourself, and it goes from 40% to a lot further than that. But that's the start of it. Get to the spot where your mind is saying stop. Wherever that is, you gotta get there first. And then that's when that starts to work for you. You gotta control yourself in that moment.
So that's the 40% rule that I just want to bring to, so it's a bit about the wall, but I'm going to bring something for in the next 2 slides. I'm pretty much going to contradict this one too. So super fun things about boundaries is they're completely personal, and they're all everyone has a different boundary and everyone has different ways to get through their boundary. That being said, what did you think about David's belief that we kind of get to that point of 40% where we start to feel discomfort, that physical that physical strain, or maybe the mental strain, and then we decide to kind of shut her down? Do we agree that that's kind of what we feel like, or do we let ourselves get past that 40% and we get to that 80% and we're like, ain't no way I'm filling this glass no more? I know what I think. I want to hear from you guys.
I can go like well, I don't know. For me, I don't have I don't want to say those issues, but like I have a high level of I don't give a fuck. So like whenever I go training or I do something and I'm not like the max I can do, like whatever, tomorrow's gonna be better. Like and like the thing that helped me with the beep test, we did this instead of telling myself, I want to get to 10 or 11, I was like, okay, well, level 10 has 5 seconds, 0.52 milliseconds. So like if I can run that like 10 times, like right now, like that's perfect. If I do it like 9.5 times, that's okay. In a month, I'll get it 10. And then in a month later, I'll get 11. And then like, I was just sectioning it down to like timings to do laps. And if I wouldn't hit like 12 in a row, one time I hit like 11. I was like, it's okay. Next week I'll do 11.5. And then after I'll get like, and like I don't know, like the point anyway, the point I'm trying to make is like every time I got to 40% or like the max I could, I was like, well, I feel like shit today. Well, tomorrow's going to be better. So that's it, end of the day. And I'm still breathing, still have a life. And like, I don't know, that's kind of how I see things.
So breaking your goals down into little achievable chunks or maybe trainable chunks helps us kind of get through some of those moments where we feel like we're at that 40%, we're at our limits. And I'm just going to point out, she uses a lot of positive reframing. She's a great example of how to reframe when we're hitting those limits. Oh, tomorrow, 9.5, that's great. I'm going to get to 10 tomorrow. This is going to be great. If I can do this, it's all right. Danny, I saw that you wanted to jump in there too. You can, if you want to share as well.
So I realized that a couple of times I wanted to answer, but there's a delay from me pushing my unmute button. And then by the time it unmutes, you're usually on the next thing. So I think, kudos for having that attitude, because I know that after running the test the 100th time, I definitely found it harder to constantly apply that same level. And I know that for me, if we're just using the same test, like I knew that each level was going to be X amount of time. And I knew that I had run it so many times that how many times back and forth each level had, so that I knew when I was trying to push at the very end, I would have a clock that I could see. I just have 1 minute for this. So because that feeling when you stop and you're like, oh, I could have just gone one more time, and you're like, oh, if I would have gotten the minimum requirement if I just ran one more there and back one more time. So I kind of, for me, that's how I was able to wrap my head around it. But all that being said is I have a hard time with what he's saying, because I in general have a hard time with any statements that are trying to explain everybody's mental space, because like Haz was saying that like that's I feel like sometimes I can be the exact opposite with my workouts, for example, because when I'm with other people, I feel like I could push myself. Like if there is an element where like if I feel really, really unfit, that I feel very self-conscious about it and I don't feel comfortable. But I also know that in some of those workouts, like I feel more likely to push myself or to go a little bit farther than I might just when it's me and myself. But everybody is different, so I feel hesitant to just say, okay, yeah, I can see. So I guess I can see how what he's saying can apply to some people based on how your internal ticking works, like, or what motivates you, what impacts your state, your mental state. Like I think, the health, and the attitude that's being set, like what you said before about with like the coach's responsibility. I mean, sure, I think like when the environment you're in sets a tone and an attitude, no matter what you're doing, whether it's training or working or like in a classroom, whatever it is, like whatever that environment, it's kind of the onus is on whoever's in charge of that. And then also on everyone inside to kind of foster that expectation. I think it really boils down to what is the expectation, because when you know what's expected of you, I think that kind of takes that out of the equation. When you're not sure if it's okay to do less than someone else, or if it's okay to do a certain amount, it's all speaking back to like, what is the expectation? What's okay? What's the minimum here? What would be fantastic and what is great? And without that being defined, I think if you could define what those expectations are, everyone who thinks differently and is impacted differently could figure out a way to kind of make it through. But that's where I kind of have a struggle with what he's saying, because it seems like, okay, well, if I don't work that way, or if you're the kind of person that can just get up and run a half marathon and that's not your 40%, well, guess what? You should have been running the full marathon, I guess, because like 10% more and you would have been at a full marathon. So like, I can't say that's accurate, but so I think like and maybe it's something that applies to everybody, but only at a certain point in time. Like I think it's too aggressive to say this is how everybody works all of the time. That's my story.
Oh, I completely agree. everyone has different aspects that really motivate them. One, two, different ways to really think about barriers. David brings a very marine-like, so he isn't a marine, he might be an ex-marine now, but he's a very marine-like personality in that this is this and there's nothing else. So if you're not believing this, you're failing. And that's kind of how he approaches that belief system in himself. But it doesn't make it true for everyone, but it could make it true for some. And, you know, like I'm kind of like baiting you guys because the stuff at the end of the slideshow is so like the complete opposite of that man. Couldn't be further from him. But at the same time, it's all working about breaking barriers. So I'm going to share my screen again, if I can get there, and bring us back to the slideshow because I'll just go over one more slide.
Oh, wait, Philippa. I just realized something while Danny was talking. I didn't really express myself well. So like when I said I break it down, like I know the lap for the level 10 was 5.52 seconds, like 5 seconds 52. So I was doing laps of 5 seconds, like, and I was trying to do 12 in a row. So like I knew that 5 was way, like I think it's fucking like level 14 or something like that. So I was like, I'm never gonna get that, but if I can like get really close. Like, I don't know how close I am to getting the 12 or the 10, but I'm not worrying about it. I'm just worrying about the 5 seconds because I know it's way above. So I don't know if I'm actually improving. I just know that I'm running fast instead of putting pressure on getting a number.
So that's a good point as well, because sometimes, and I'll tell you, the way you're training is unique in that it certainly trains your speed and gets you prepared to do those speed moments. But the beep test is all about getting to your lactic acid threshold and pushing past it. So getting that really uncomfortable feeling, and then when everyone wants kind of stop, and then learning what our limits are beyond that, because that's kind of, it's examining how your body is breaking down the lactic acid to use as energy. And that's our VO2 max. That's the maximum that we're reaching. So like my physiological self can answer that question for you a little bit. But yeah, those are great points to bring in. And you know, I'm a big believer in compartmentalizing when it comes to sport and our training regimen, because if we look, I mean, I know, like I did it to you guys too, when I sent you guys your training program, I think 3 years ago when we did the variable training program, I had a lot of people coming back saying, holy, this is too much for me. I can't do this. Like, this is insane. How am I supposed to fit this in my day? I have no time. Like, and it was overwhelming for a lot of people because they didn't break it down into small digestible chunks for you guys to take right away. I threw it all out to you and I said, this is all the time I have. Here's your program. Bye. And kind of just left you guys on your way. But you know, like that doesn't work for a lot of people. So thank you for that. I am going to kind of skip through this slide. I left it up long enough. I feel like a lot of people have kind of seen it, but you know, attitude, motivation, and your commitment, those three things make up athletes that mental barriers really have minimal effect on. They usually have the attitude to get through them. They have that stubborn, like I'm going to call it stubbornness because it really is a stubbornness that I'm just determined. I'm going to go for this. I'm going to keep going forward. I'm going to stay motivated going forward. And I'm going to be committed to that one goal that I have at the end of the line. Danny, I'm just going to pull that example that you had because sometimes we don't know what the expectations, we don't know what the goal is at the end of the line. So sometimes if one of those pieces are missing, we lack that motivation. We have the right attitude. We want to do well. We want to perform, but we don't know what we're doing. So we don't know where we're going. So we don't know how hard we're supposed to work. We don't know if we should be working 120% all the time, or if we should be doing, you know, we're in our less load phase of our training plan. So we don't have to do 120. We can stick to the 60% because that's the whole point of the less load training regimen. So I completely agree with you, Danny. Sometimes we do need to have those very defined expectations laid out for us so we know which way we're going. I'm just going to keep moving. So basic mental barriers, these are the three things that we usually, this is Psych 101. We have barriers about ourselves, our beliefs about others, and what the world expects of us around us. So we kind of already kind of tackled a lot of these things. Sometimes we self-doubt. Sometimes we don't believe what other people are telling us about ourselves or what, you know, what others are observing about ourselves. And sometimes we don't trust the world around us, the judgment of others. We don't trust that the world is there to help us or support us. We feel judged. We feel too competitive maybe with the world. We feel too isolated from the people around us. So these three aspects I'm going to guarantee your barrier fits in one of those 3 columns. Sorry, getting real there. So here we have unhealthy thought patterns. I think I put this in the first one: recognize, reflect, and react. Recognize, reflect, and react. I'm going to keep hammering it into you because a lot of times we forget the one first part. We don't recognize that we're having a reaction. We're just reacting. We're just in that reactive phase. But these, and I should have used a better word than unhealthy, but these thought patterns, this is what stems a lot of our mental barriers. I can't do this. They don't believe I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. This thing is way too big for me to get through. Or, my friends or my parents, this is a true story. My parents are always like, they're grounders for me. So they're like, Phil, you suck, you sucked at that sport today. Like, why did you perform so terribly? Those dysfunctional beliefs. I knew I rocked it. I got told. But they kept me grounded. My parents kept me on the ground because I'm flighty, but we've all of us, I would be so surprised and impressed if one of you guys haven't had these self-doubts in ourselves or these unhealthy thought patterns. So unhealthy doesn't mean unhealthy. It just means we need to recognize if we're denying ourselves the opportunity to perform. If we're thinking that we're alone and we don't have support, I'm going to tell you, look around the Zoom call right now. There's a bunch of people that support you and are here to help motivate you and keep you pepped up. If we don't know something, we ask something. Not knowing something is never a barrier because we just need to ask the questions. We need to be open to those opportunities. We might not understand the situation properly. I'm going to tell you guys a story because, I'm sure everyone's got a lot of, our gym's open in Nova Scotia. All the gyms are still open. And we are seeing a lot of, how do I say it politely? We're seeing a lot of jerks coming into our gym that are just mad. And, they're not angry, I would say, at PSP, but we're the front line. So we are getting sworn at every day. We're getting shit thrown at us. We're getting treated like crap all the time. So much so, we have authorized at least 4 membership suspensions, never coming back to our gyms this week alone, because we're so sick of this kind of treatment. It's completely a dysfunctional attitude that these members are coming into our gym. It's dysfunctional because they don't understand that we're having to put this stuff on, not because, Philip is telling you guys to do these things, but it's because province of Nova Scotia is asking us that this is what we have to do to remain open. So now we have to maintain what the provincial levels and then the federal levels of requirements for opening. So we understand that, but our participants, our patrons, they're so mad that it's affecting them. It's creating this dysfunctional attitude towards the situation. So we're trying to educate them, but eventually we're just like, we're done with this. We can't handle it. We're done. You're done. You're done. So yeah, that's happening across gyms across Canada. If they're still open, I'm telling you that right now. So dysfunctional beliefs or towards your friends and family around the world and the world around you. Those could be, I looked at that as beliefs that your friends are having. So we have people that are telling us constantly that we're underperforming in their world or we're not good enough for something. Those are also dysfunctional things that can affect us and our beliefs and performance. But also, and I would kind of tag dysfunctional beliefs towards friends, family, and the world around you, tag that with the perceived lack of social support. They're very tied together because if we don't understand that our family or friends are supporting us, if we don't believe that they are there for us, we don't think the world is there to help, to help us, or I shouldn't say the world is there to help us, but, I look at the world as everyone's kind of moving towards a positive goal and we're not trying to bring anyone else down around us. But if I have the opposite thought process, then that is actually what's going to happen with me, right? So the first thing with these thought processes is recognizing that you're having them and understanding that you need to be reframing that thought, or you can't get that thought out of your head. You pair it with what you know should be your actual thought. I can't do this. Of course I can. I shouldn't do this. Why not? You've just got to learn how to pair it and just end on your positive note and move past that moment. And again, I'm just kind of whipping through here because I want to get to my fun tidbits at the end of it. So how do we prepare ourselves for avoiding the wall or getting through a barrier? Stop thinking about the barrier. Seems so counterintuitive, but stop thinking about it. And it ends up going poof because it's imaginary a lot of times. Making a plan, compartmentalize. We talked about that already. Mental imagery. I think I mentioned this in the first presentation, but I will tell you that that was part of my master's program was mental imagery, and the impact that you have when you picture yourself doing the sport well, not failing, doing well in the sport, actually represents itself on the field. So if you picture yourself not doing well, you're constantly buggering up in your dreams, in your mental imagery, when you're focusing on doing well, you will not do well in the field. But if you're having those thoughts and you're like, screw that, I'm going to do well in my mental imagery here, the more you practice those skills in your I want to say game plan, but in your practices, the more you practice it, the more it becomes real. And those skills, I feel like I'm explaining it wrong, but tactile skills can actually be practiced in your brain without doing anything and actually perform better on the field. So if I'm practicing my corner kicks in my head constantly, I actually end up doing a little bit better on my corner kicks on the field.
Can I say something to that one actually too? So I've definitely kind of had issues with that, and now I'm losing my train of thought again. Shit. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, one of the issues that I always had was if I tried to like talk myself up with all this positive talk and I really got myself to the point where I believed I was going to do well, then when I made a mistake, I found it like super crushing, and I was like, well, that's what you get for being overconfident and believing you can do this when you really can't. Whereas I found like if I always just expected myself to do poorly, then it's like, oh, well, it's just what I expected, which is a really terrible mindset to have, and it did not help me. So that's something that I've been working really hard to try and break past, and sometimes I can, sometimes I can't now, but yeah, it's definitely, I've definitely noticed that before.
And you know what, I'm thank you for sharing that, because that's a really important part to mention, because sometimes we defeat ourselves when practice. It's a practice, right? We're never going to be perfect at everything all the time, ever. There is no amount of practice you can do to be perfect all the time. In fact, those ones that do manage to get the perfection are the gold medal winners in the Olympics, right? Because they were able to finally do perfect in a performance that was public and such a high pressure situation. That's why they were doing so well. Experience mistakes. Oh, jumping in there, Joni. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a bit with what you were saying, like mental imagery. Like, I don't know for you guys, but like, I'm probably weird, but I like when I dream, I like redoing my dream to like control it in a different way. So I found that like, not to put pressure on me to perform that much, but like I would imagine a situation on the field. I would imagine myself like, okay, what would I do? Like, I'm doing it. Fuck, it didn't work. Okay, I'm doing it again. And then like you just keep redoing this, like reimagining this without necessarily telling yourself like, oh, I will perform perfectly, but I'm trying. It's like a simulator in my head. Does that make sense? I'm like kind of controlling my own dream, like thinking I could get it.
That's the exact perfect example of mental imagery. That's what mental imagery is. It's conscious control of your dreams. But getting past, some of the mistakes that we have and not letting ourselves dwell in it, we can tell ourselves that that's part of those unhealthy thought processes, and we've got to react to those thought processes, because it's not reasonable to think to yourself, one mistake means a fail. Because that's right. Like if I make a mistake in my document, whatever I wrote today, like I made a document up, there was more than one mistake. But if I let that affect me to the point where I had to stop and just, or I shouldn't say let it affect me, but if I thought that was the end, like I can't do this document anymore because I've made so many mistakes, instead of being like, okay, how do I do better next time? And it's reframing the exact same situation. I've reframed my thought into being like, rather than just sit on my butt and be like, man, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm going to pass it to the admin assistant, you can do this. I'm going to focus and I'm going to try and see what I can learn from it. So the next time I do this, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to have to be like, hey, you want to take some work? Ooh, bye. So I'm just going to jump ahead because we are kind of cutting down. I don't want to take up too much of your Like we're all doing this in our spare time, and I can respect you guys for saying this. This is my special slide. The Buddhist hindrances of our goals from Master Shi Shen. So completely opposite to Mr. 40%, everyone can get through it. The Buddhist recognizes that we all have inherent aspects of us. We have a sensual desire. We all have an ill will. We all want to, go the easy path and have like a little bit, and I'll describe a little bit of these because the way that they concept these things is a little bit different than what we would phrase them as. And we all have a little bit of restlessness, skeptical doubt. So sensual desire is a hindrance to our goals in that we pay attention to things that bring us more pleasure than those things that are drawing us towards our goals. So things like sight, sound, and taste and touch, not just, sexy times, but we're talking like those delicious Big Macs, like, oh, that's delicious. And we're all loving those things. But, that's going to get in the way of my goal. And it's a sensual desire that I have to have that thing, but I have to practice overcoming my self-desire with those things, just like Mr. David Goggins did. In that the question we ask ourselves to get past that moment is, will this help me or hurt me in the long run? Will having my Big Mac right now help me or hurt me in the long run? It'll be delicious, but it's certainly going to hurt later, right? We look at ill will. Ill will is something, when we're PSP, we get a lot of people that have never trained before that join the military, as weird as that sounds. And so when they start to train with us and start feeling the physical impact of training, they effing hate it. I cannot express how many sad faces I've seen on a gym floor because I'm training them, not because I'm a bad trainer and not because I'm not energetic, but because they effing hate moving their body because they're not comfortable with the discomfort that comes from physical training. So they always try to avoid it. And that's what ill will is. It's avoiding the things that bring you discomfort, such as those guys not training, and then it gets harder and harder. So circle down the drain on that one. So what the Buddhist belief is that we don't need, instead of ignoring it, those ill wills, like, so we're just going to be like, I'm avoiding doing my training for so long. We have to investigate why we're trying to avoid it. What is it that we dislike about it? Ask yourself why. Confront those discomfort moments. Maybe it's because you've never thought to think past those moments or conflicts, or we have a past experience where something went wrong and now that's limiting us. How do we move past those moments? And that's all we got to ask ourselves. What can I do next time to get myself past this discomfort? How do I embrace the discomfort? So if we look at dullness and aversion, this is pretty much Netflix and chill, guys. But dullness and aversion is all about, when we feel sleepy, we're unmotivated, we're lacking energy. Sometimes this can be manifested in a state of depression where we feel like there's no joy, there's no light around us. We feel imprisoned. We're locked in our own cell of our own motivation, which isn't happening. So as with all of the hindrances, you first got to recognize you're in that moment of aversion and dullness. You got to recognize that you're in that place where you don't want to move and you're unmotivated. Because I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of people that have depression sometimes don't realize that they're in a moment of depression or they're having those symptoms of depression until it gets to a point where they are at the sinkiest of the sinky. They're at the lowest of the low. And that's when they're like, I don't feel like myself anymore. And then they recognize that that's happening all the time. So recognition is the most important thing when it comes to dullness and aversion. And then the next step that you would take is thinking about the tiny, smallest steps that you can take to get out of those dullness and aversion moments. So going 5 runs at level 10 speed, maybe that's what gets you past your dullness and aversion or something. But something could be as simple as reaching out to a friend and asking for help. Or, the Buddhists believe that a walking meditation can fix our dullness and aversion, but I don't know if that's the sprinkle magic dusting on what can get you out of that, but that's what they believe. So restlessness is another thing that'll get it in our way of our goals. I'm super guilty of being super restless. I think Energizer Bunny, that was my nickname growing up too. I was also called the ball off the wall because I'm bing, 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 bing all over the place. I'm constantly moving, right? So sometimes for me, it's very hard to settle in the present moment. but I have to train my brain through like mindfulness practice. I won't say meditation because sometimes that's kind of, some people get uncomfortable with that word, but I have to practice mindfulness to stay present. So I'm not thinking about the 100 different things and flying away and like jumping over there and, oh my goodness, there's an opportunity to go to alert this week. I'm going to go there. You know, like I'm trying to keep myself very mindful and present in the moment. One phrase that they use for restlessness is the monkey mind, because we're jumping branch to branch to branch to branch. So it's the monkey mind time. So again, Buddhists believe meditation is the key to all things, and they believe that meditation is the most effective way to overcome restlessness. And I've kind of confirmed that because that's what I'm doing. I'm doing mindfulness practice. So I'm staying present. I'm trying to recognize when I'm like all over the place and bring myself back into the moment. And skeptical doubt is the last one. This is our indecisiveness. I'm not sure if I should do this. Maybe I'll do this, maybe I won't, I don't know. Or we get lost in our thoughts, you know, can I do this? What if others judge me? I hate this place. You know, that's the skeptical doubt that comes out. I guess it's the 13-year-old teenager in us all, but that's what happens in skeptical doubt phase. So how do we get past our skeptical doubt? The key is to challenge yourself. Why am I thinking this way? Does it make any sense that I'm doubting this? Is there logic to it? So these are I'm reading these directly from my page here because these are not my normal trains of thoughts to pull myself out of my skeptical doubt. Sometimes I need to find the research, and I need to have something tactile outside of myself to believe and get past my doubt moments. So that's just me though. But to get past all these things, we let it rain. And this is the Buddhist master, the monk that lives in Germany. He actually has he has a little studio there that you can go and join for free if you wanted to, but he lets it rain. So we recognize what our state of mind is, we accept the situation, we investigate why we're having those feelings, and then we don't identify with it. We let it go, because that's the one thing we tend to hold on to when it comes to our barriers. They're mine. I'm keeping them. I'm not letting them go. I'm going to keep them in my brain. But we got to understand that as we develop and as we go forward, you know, transfer that energy to somewhere else. Get rid of that. Get rid of those thought processes, or just one counselor I used to work with, you used to just say, just allow it to happen, but don't react to it. And I think that's one of the ways that we can say, like, if we're having trouble letting go of some of our apprehensions or barriers or anxieties, accept that we have those moments, accept that thought, accept those moments of it, and then walk past it, walk away from it. I use a parking lot technique. I think I talked about this last time. Parking lot that stuff, put it on a piece of paper and get it away from you, and put it down on it, and you can read. And I'm going to tell you right now, sometimes when we read our barriers, we start to recognize how silly they sound when they're out loud outside of our body. You know, like even some of the examples tonight, we've laughed at ourselves because it doesn't make sense that we're having those thoughts, because they're not like we know that they're not normal thoughts all the time, and they shouldn't be happening. So I wanted to finish on this slide here. There are two mistakes to mastery. Mastery of techniques is what he's talking about, or mastery of our mind. So recognizing we have a problem and not changing it, that's an issue. Recognizing we have a problem, accepting it, and not moving past it, that's a problem too. So we have to learn how to notice. I love that Valerie's cooking right now. I love that. We have to know, hey girl, what are we having for dinner? So we have to recognize a problem, thought pattern, situations that cause us to react negatively, that cause us to withdraw into ourselves, that cause us to not perform the way that we wish we could, the way that we want to, the way, you know, and I said it before, it doesn't even need to be sport, it could just be life itself for you. Recognize and understand where it's coming from, and then rationalize with yourself why it's not a normal thought, or why you can get past it. Or if you can't do it on your own, I'm looking at a room right now filled with people that, you know, there's your room. Here's a bunch of people that is there for you to provide you the support and give you that impact that, girl, that's totally in your head. You're 100%. You can do this. You've got this. And we coach each other. And Valerie nailed it. Like, I think it was Valerie that said it, but, or what was it? It was Danny, I think, but I don't see her anymore. But it was, the coach, the team, we set the tone. So if we set the tone to be supportive, there for each other, and compassionate, the team is going to grow forward, and you're going to find there's going to be a lot less mental barriers for yourself and for your teammates, right? Communities build communities. I'm sure as my military audience knows that. But we build each other up, and that's how we stand tall. I'm going to leave this to you guys. So if you have any questions, I know we're at the end of the time. So if you did need to get out of here, by all means, I'll see you later. But if you have a question, or if you want to stay on the line for any reason, I see a Galaxy S10. I'm just not sure if that's James that's jumped on there. It's weird that he's not here tonight. He was supposed to.
It's Coach Elwa.
Hi, Galaxy.
Hi, thanks for joining. We're just finishing up here. I wanted to say thank you for having this discussion, and thanks to everyone for participating. Oh, sorry, I got a naked little 4-year-old. Beth. It's good to see. It's good to reflect and think that there's not only physical barriers when it comes to fitness, but also mental barriers, and that goes around with it, with work, with fitness, with sport. And with trying to put up with kids while they homeschool. So I'm glad we were able to reflect on it, and super thankful for the presentation. I'll let you do questions, and then if there's any further questions that anyone has, they can do it over email. Thanks everyone for participating tonight.
Thanks, Melanie. And I just want to reiterate, if you're not comfortable posing those questions in our group, by all means, reach out to me in email. I'm here to talk to you guys. Like, I do this for a living, for goodness sake. So just shout out to me. I'm here to help. So questions, if anyone has them.
We were talking about reframing and accepting and all that jazz beforehand. And I guess everybody has the same experience in the beep test, that we hate it, and that's probably the biggest barrier in my head right now, and continuing with this program, because I'm at the point where I compartmentalize so much. Like, I learned every second how many stages, like Joanne, you did. Like, I know there's 5 stages of X amount of seconds, and I need to push through and whatever, but once you're in the moment, I find it hard to realize that you're stuck in the moment and then not push further in. So how do you deal with that? Because it's easy when I'm on a treadmill running, but when you're on the test itself, recognizing and switching that mentality in the 2.5 seconds you have to get to the next line, like, how do you deal with that in the moment?
So that's a really good question, and I'm going to answer it by a physiological side as well as the psychological side. So I'm going to go ahead. I had to do the beep test for years and years and years, part of my job as well. We had to get incentive level to stay employed, really. So we were having to reach higher. I mean, I think at that time, like, women were having to reach 5.5 as our incentive level, but that's neither here nor there. We always went for the boys' incentive levels. That was what PSP did. And I would get really anxious, so anxious on those days, because, well, here I have my employment in question, as well as I'm surrounded by amazing athletes who are complete naturals at everything, weightlifting, everything, sprinting, everything around them. They touch it and they do well. And my natural aptitude for sport is skill-based, so karate, or, like soccer, like it's more of an endurance skill-based sport. So, they outperform me all the time. So I would come to those tests and my heart rate would be probably 15 beats higher at my resting zone. So, like, I'm feeling it right now. Like, we're all feeling that sweaty palms, like we get a little bit anxious, like that happens. And when that happens, your ceiling on your performance actually decreases. So you actually you cannot perform well. And that's not because your mental barrier is there, but because when you walked into the field, when you walked into the court, when you walked into the gym, you're setting, like, my anxiety set me up for failure before the beep had started. And you know, how do I get past those moments? Well, it was about learning how to approach the field without that anxiety. So not thinking about the test creating the anxiety, it was learning about how do I control my breathing? How do I control my heart rate when I'm feeling anxious? And it was, and I'm going to go back to mindfulness, but you know, it was a lot of learning, and it was a lot of breathing techniques. And sometimes it was bringing the right person with me to snap me out of my head and just I was going to swear there, but like make a ton of jokes at me. Or, you know, sometimes like one of my coworkers, because we, you know, PSP, we all test together. We can't test with military. My coworker would be beside me, and she's like she'd get 14 on the beep test without even like blinking at it. So she'd be beside me talking the whole time, and I'm having a great time. Like I'm laughing in the middle of a flipping beep test while I'm running, still making my lines. So, you know, like how do you get past those moments? It's, you know, it's finding your perfect storm in terms of bringing yourself to that first line and being calm on that first line. Because I'll tell you, you probably wouldn't be getting to that point where you think I've got to go through 2.5 more seconds, because your heart rate can't go any higher. You literally have given yourself a ceiling subconsciously because you're anxious. So if you calm down the anxiety, if we can settle the nerve, the performance comes forward, because you guys are all training. I know you are, and I know you all can do the test. It's how do we approach the test with less anxiety? So practice makes perfect, but also sometimes, you know, that's the exposure technique. Exposure sometimes decreases our anxiety, not for you guys, because you guys are in the same boat that I was, which was, you know, your position depends on it. Your position in the team depends on it. You know, so there's a lot riding sometimes on those tests. But Joni had a really good technique for it. She just, you know, she took it one step at a time and was able to get to a point where she could perform maybe on her own. And then maybe she took it back to that test and she did well. And if she didn't, you know, she told herself, okay, tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow and it'll be okay. Or maybe the next day. Joni's getting a finger up, not the finger, but
Yeah, I was gonna add maybe like it will help you. Like I wasn't too clear when I said that earlier. So like I would say like start by changing your relationship with it. Like your relationship to beep test, don't even worry about a beep test. It doesn't exist. Like, and even now the yo-yo test that I did, honestly, it's so much worse. Like I hate it, but so now I have to change my relationship again. Like the beep test was going well for me. And I know Danny said, okay, maybe after 10 years or 5 years, you'll be like, yeah, I don't like, maybe I won't say that in 5 years, but for now I'm still like, it's good. It's fun. But my point with that was like, so now that you know, okay, so I know from level 9 to 10.5, there's 17 laps. I know that it's 5.52 seconds, like I said before. So I was training at 5 seconds, and I never tried to test myself with the beep test for like a month or 2 or 3 even. It was like, it doesn't matter what I get on the beep test. It doesn't matter if I practice this. If I practice laps of 5 seconds and I can't, because like the way I did it, I did 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 60 seconds, and then I did 60 seconds, 45, 30, and 15. And every time, so like those 15, you get like 15, you should get 3 laps, 36 laps, 45, 9 laps, and go on. So like the 60 seconds, that's 12 laps. 12 laps is at 5 seconds is so hard, and it's almost level 14. And every time in between, I would take a break of what I was about to do. So if I do 15 seconds, 3 laps, I got 15 seconds of rest, because you do everything twice before going down and up. So like what I was saying earlier, when I got like, after doing it twice 15 seconds, that's twice 15 seconds, twice 30 seconds, twice 45 seconds. When I got to 60 seconds, it was hard. The 12 laps, I was never getting 12. But like sometimes one time, like I got 9, and then the next week I got 10, and then I got like 11, and then I was really close. So that's how I kind of like changed my relationship with the beep test. I didn't think about the beep test. I thought about run 5 seconds laps, the best as you can, and like you'll see if it worked or not, kind of thing. Like I wasn't thinking about the test. So when I came to do the test, it was like, I've been doing much harder than what is expected of me. So like I had like a more like a better relationship with it. I wasn't as anxious. And also like we're a bit luckier than Phil in a sense that like we all have our life, we all have like work, we all have like friends and family and things. So like yes, like CISM is important, but like you're not gonna die tomorrow. You're not gonna be a lesser person because so like you kind of gotta get rid of those thoughts. Like you kind of gotta accept already that you will fail, and you're like, well, worst like the best case is I get it. The worst case, like I'm already where I am right now. Does that make sense? Like kind of getting rid of like the big pressure because like our employment doesn't really depend on that, so we're lucky in that sense. Yeah.
Can I
And
add
like
something?
yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I'm going on a rant.
It's Coach Elwa here. I just want to say something, but I need to put my Yeti costume on first. Okay, wait a second. Could everybody see my Yeti costume now? Yeah? Okay, just to make you laugh a little bit. But you know, having been in the program with the boys before I joined the girls' side, I can tell you, and having played at the national level with my national team in Togo, I can tell you, even at a higher level, when you wear that jersey, you're gonna feel on the field. There's always a little bit of anxiety. My first touches were always, you know, the first 5 minutes is always crooked, and I don't know what I'm doing there. So you know, but I can tell you that working with the men CISM team for a while, yeah, the beginning is always a little bit difficult. But the last time we went to China, like the result was there. Like I've seen people who couldn't do the text. My goalies couldn't do what we're asking them. But I can assure you, by the end of the preparation, they were all top notch. So, you know, if you I can encourage you. For now, you can say, okay, it's getting difficult, but you will improve for sure. Like I have been doing this, you know, even with I started. Do you know, girls, that I'm doing the same program you are doing with my boys. I'm testing it, and you know, I have broken knees, you know, about every 5:30 in the morning, I go in my garage, and I'm trying my best, you know, to feel how you are feeling. So I'm here with you, I'm praying for you, you're gonna make it, okay?
Thanks, Coach. That's a good point. Yeah, thank you. And you know, all of the techniques, whatever techniques you have, as long as you keep going and you're staying forward thinking and you're not giving up, to me that shows such high strength of resiliency, your mental resiliency, that you should give yourself a pat on the back. You guys have overcome a lot of barriers in your life, even if you don't even realize it. And you're here today as proof that you can get through all of your barriers. And and I'll just speak to those, exactly what Coach Eli was saying there was that, if you're not successful now, that's okay. Because remember what I said, our physical limits are elastic. So we just might be thinking that we're at the edge, but really we can pull that elastic band a lot further. We can see how far we can stretch ourselves and see how far we can go with our abilities. Because there really is no ceiling on what we can perform. Because even athletes at the Olympic levels, physiologists and their trainers, we're training them to get that 0.6, 0.7, 0.8 second edge on the next competitor. If so facto, there is no limits to that person. We're creating the next way that person can get past that barrier of the competition. So you guys are doing a great job as you are going right now. And again, we are kind of, I'm going to have to close it down at this point, unless someone else has something else that they wanted to add. I don't want to cut anyone else off. We're just running a little bit late. Running into the world, clocking it your way, guys. All All right, well, thank you so much for joining us tonight then, ladies and gents. It was a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for participating. It really does help me know where and what to give you guys for skills and what stuff that you're looking for in terms of presentations. I don't even have the next date in front of me of the next presentation. That's how organized I am right now, but I know it's coming up next month. So there's a presentation next month. It's going to be back on the Mondays. Sorry about the Wednesday, but it's going to be back on the Monday. So hopefully it works a little bit better with the schedules. These presentations that do not have our Olympic athletes in, or some personal stories about military experiences, I will be posting these presentations to the YouTube page. That's something I can do because there's very little contained of what we talked about that is a security risk or anything else. And I'm going to tell you right now, nobody goes to my Facebook or my YouTube page anyway. So it's just you ladies that would be seeing it. That's not anything about me. That's just like, I'm happy nobody comes to my page. So you guys, like, I can keep putting the stuff for CISM on it. Of course, as long as the managers are okay with that and the coaches are okay with that. So thank you all for coming tonight and have a great rest of your evening. Enjoy your dinner, Valerie.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.